Okay, all right. We are live once again on a special day, on a Wednesday this time. Very exciting. Very exciting to be doing this on a Wednesday. We have some new stuff today. Two new segments. Very excited to show you myself struggling and attempting to learn classical Chinese. We're going to be going through an old out of copyright textbook from 1927. So that's going to be fun. And we're going to work our way through the first chapter and see what we can do. I will preface it by saying I don't really know very much classical Chinese. I know a little bit. I've tried, over the years a few times to get started with it, but if we're going to learn something, we might as well learn it together, right? So that's the first segment that's coming up. The second segment that's coming up is going to be top 5 wacky French etymologies. Originally, I had this whole thing planned of the top 10 Romance etymologies that just where the modern word looks nothing like the Latin word, but as I went through, all the wackiest ones were French, because French has gone through so many changes over the years that I thought, okay, well, if it's mostly going to be French, let's focus on French, and we can go in a little bit more depth. And I found some pretty wacky etymologies, and so we'll be zooming in, looking at 5 of them, and trying to derive the modern French form from the ancestral form. So that's going to be number 2. And number 3 is we're going to do a little bit more work on our Conlang project. This time I have it in mind that we're going to travel back in time and create an ancestor language for our Conlang, which will allow us to do some cool things to help with the naturalism. It'll let us make start deriving things in the proto-language and then running them through some sound changes, running them through history, and then getting modern forms, which are often going to be irregular in the modern form due to those changes. So this is a nice way. I always like to put a little bit of naturalism into a Conlang, and this is a really great way to do it. So yeah, we're going to be doing kind of historical linguistics, 2/3 historical linguistics, 1/3 language learning today. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited too, Lucy. Let's do this. Okay. So why don't we begin with the classical Chinese? Because I've got the windows set up. So let's move over and let's take a look at, yes, okay. You can see my expert, tiling abilities here. So we're looking at a textbook. You can see here, Introduction to Literary Chinese by J. Brandt, and this is from 1927. And this is interesting. So we have this distinction: classical Chinese, literary Chinese. We can sort of zoom out and treat them as similar or sharing some important similarities. They're not the same thing. Literary Chinese refers to the language developed from classical Chinese that was used over the years as a literary language in China and elsewhere in East Asia. And if any sinologists want to pop into the comments and give a more sophisticated analysis of that, please do. But this is the Chinese language as it was written for many, many hundreds of years. Of course, it did undergo changes through that time, much like in Europe, Latin underwent changes over the centuries, but you can still sort of talk about Latin being a literary language in Europe. And so we have the same kind of thing in East Asia with literary Chinese. And so we're going to do the first lesson of this Introduction to Literary Chinese book. And we're going to see how it goes, because this language is a challenging language. As I was saying earlier, I have attempted it a few times, attempted to get started with it, but it, well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So let us give a look at this first chapter here. So in this middle pane, Introduction to Literary Chinese, we can I think make that a little bit bigger for now. So here, the format of this textbook is kind of interesting. On the right here, we have the literary Chinese. This is a short text that we're going to be translating. And here we have the sort of spoken paraphrase of this, of the text. And this is interesting because at the time in China, there was a situation of diglossia where you had very different ways of speaking and writing. So much so that they could be called different languages. And so they existed within this context where if you spoke, you would speak one way, and here we have the spoken form represented. Here we are on the left, and the written form would be on the right. The written form is, of course, a lot more concise, and this is a kind of special thing due to the nature of how Chinese characters operate. If you were to just speak this in whatever system of pronunciation that you were using, you would have a lot of homophony. So you'd have a lot of characters that sounded the same. And that could make it hard to understand. As you can imagine, if characters all sound, if a bunch of different morphemes are all going to be pronounced the same, it can be challenging in certain contexts to tell which one you're talking about. We have this in English to a certain extent, a limited extent, where we have words like to, and if I just say to you, we don't know if it's T-O-O, T-W-O, or T-O. Well, imagine that just spread across the whole language. So with writing, on the other hand, we have an easier time because the writing system of Chinese makes more distinctions than the writing system of Chinese is morphographic. It writes morphemes. So if there's a morpheme distinction, that's going to generally be reflected by using a different character. It is not primarily a phonographic writing system. So the homophony doesn't end up being a problem. Let's talk a bit about pronunciation, though. So the convention in studying classical Chinese or literary Chinese these days is to pronounce the characters as they would be pronounced in Mandarin. And so we'll be going along with that. It's a bit, it's a bit in some ways strange because the grammar of the language dates back to a very, very early period where it would have sounded a lot different. But it's the convention is to pronounce the characters, at least for Westerners studying the language, with the modern Mandarin pronunciations. Okay, enough preface. Let's get started. So what I've done is I've copied out the text. So one thing that's interesting, at this point we are going from top to bottom and right to left. That's the order in which Chinese was once read, and of course now we see Chinese written left to right, top to bottom, but at the time you would start at the top right and just go down and then across to the left. So we're going to be going this way, if you can see my mouse there. And we're going to leave the spoken form to the side. That's not going to be relevant for us today. But what I've done here, and I hope I've done a good job of it, is written out the text sentence by sentence in this Excel or in this Google Sheets over to the right. And I thought what we would do is just sort of go line by line and translate. So we'll look up the words, we'll try and understand what's going on with the grammar, and we'll see if we can learn something. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I see. That's a lot of letters. I'm not sure. IWSFUTCMD. Yes. Still occasionally written and read in that direction, especially outside of mainland China. Absolutely. And I think it looks really cool. And as a left-handed writer, as a left-handed person, it's a lot nicer to go in that direction for me, or at least for the people who are going to read my ink-smudged writing. So, okay, let's begin. So I'm going to use this handy trick to get multiple views of the same PDF. Hey Ben, okay, thanks. Yes. So let's get multiple views of this PDF open so that we can look at the vocabulary, we can look at the text, and then we can do our gloss and see what we can get. Okay. So the first thing we have is the title of the text, which appears to be, and I'm going to pronounce it in my sort of lower intermediate Mandarin. It appears to be Ji Xiong, which is written here in actually the Wade Giles transcription system, which is not super popular these days. It takes a bit of getting used to, but take my somewhat word for it, take my lower intermediate word for it, that it's something like that. Jixiong. And so what are we going to translate these as? Let's just do a morpheme by morpheme gloss. The writing system's kind of nice because it tells us exactly where the morphemes start and end, one to one. So we have Ji, which is something like fortunate, prosperous, auspicious. The textbook is giving us a bit of a hand here and saying, hey, by the way, the meaning used in the text is given in italics. So it's nudging us in the direction of auspicious. So let's go for it. What do we have next? Xiong, unfortunate, unlucky, cruel. So we have auspicious, unlucky. We'll go over this and make it a bit nicer as a translation, but let's just do it. Just do it morpheme by morpheme to start out with to see what we've got here. I'm guessing this is either going to be something like good and bad luck, or the lucky and the unlucky, or maybe just luck. But we can keep going. Okay, what's the next sentence? We have You ya ji ting shu. I think my Wade Giles my interpretation of Wade Giles is like very, very, very tenuous, but it's mostly the same as it's mostly one-to-one with pinyin. So we have here a verb, to have, to exist, to be. So let's just say be. Crow, ya. And then what do we have? A verb, ji, which means flock together, collect, or compile. It's telling us we should use flock together. So be, crow, flock together, ting. The audience hall, a courtyard, a room, a house. Here we have the suggestion to say courtyard. And what's next? Shu, a tree. Okay. So morpheme by morpheme, we have bee, crow, flock together, courtyard, tree. Let's take advantage of the help that it's going to give us. So it has a little footnote here saying note A. Let's go take a look at note A. Hopefully we can adjust the sizes here so everyone can see everything. Hopefully. Okay, so here we have this explanation: flock together upon a tree in a courtyard. The use of the prepositions upon and in can be easily deduced from the connection, while in the spoken version of the story the prepositions are clearly indicated. Okay. So so it's almost as if we have a compound here on the courtyard tree. So there were crows which flocked together on a tree in a courtyard, on a courtyard tree. So it looks like we don't have to explicitly talk about the relationship between these two nouns. It's just they're just put together in a compound, and you have to interpret what the semantic relationship is. So let's say there, as our first guess, there were crows flocking together on a tree in a courtyard. We're going to flow off. So let's wrap. Not quite that much. Great. And let's call this good and bad luck for now. Maybe I am wrong about that, but we'll see. First guess. Okay. What's next? Our next sentence. we have a, oops, we need to go up one page. We need to go to this. Okay, so here we have a verb stretch, in. Stretch, and then we have, I think this is going to be pronounced jing. The neck. So in jing, ming. So here we have an interesting particle. It calls it a conjunctive particle, which we can translate as and. So let's translate it as and for now, but I think we're going to be told a little bit more about it soon. And ming, I think we would translate as sing in the case of crows. So let's see what our grammatical notes have to say for us. And unfortunately, it's slightly cut off here, but oops, there we go. Okay, so the characters in jing with the aid of er, whose literary meaning here is and, form a complement to the verb, answering the question how in what way. Interesting. Okay, so this is almost like an adverbial. They sang, stretching their necks. Perhaps would be a good translation of that. Okay, what else? What else happens? Oh, incidentally, I'm just putting this in the past tense because this seems to be like a little fable. We don't have an explicit tense marking in here, but nevertheless, all of these things are guesses that we might be proven wrong about later. Let's see, what's our next sentence? We have our ch, I think. Is that ch? Our ch. So we have child. This is translated as hoot at. And then, we have something that's cut off. And I happen to remember this from a previous study of classical Chinese, that this is kind of an all-important particle that we see all over the place. It, if I remember correctly, it acts as a sort of subordinator, which you could translate as of or apostrophe s. It acts as a it's a sign of, I'm assuming, the possessive case. It's used as a third person pronoun for the objective case, so the accusative, him, her, it, them. And it also means to go or proceed. So we have no help. It's giving us no help here as to how to choose between that. But I think, given the fact that it's at the end of the sentence, and we seem to have an SVO language here, I think we might call this third person accusative. So who would these accusative things be referring to? Probably the crows. So we have a child hooted at them. Okay. Our chi. Next, we have a very short sentence. Fu yue. Father, speak. So I'm taking this as a kind of a quotative. His father said. What's next? Shi he hai. Shi he hai. Interestingly, if you know Mandarin, you might be expecting this to be the verb to be, which it is not. It is a pronoun, this or that. So let's translate it as this, because that's what we're given. The help. That's the help that it gives us. So let's take advantage. This and let's make sure you can see, because I realize my camera's in there blocking some of the blocking some of the material. This and then he, an interrogative particle. This appears to be kind of how, why, what, so some sort of WH question. And hi, harm. So idiomatically, maybe something like, what's the harm in this? Let's see, do we get any help for this one? Oh, we actually got help for the previous sentence, which I callously ignored. Let's see. Here, it is a pronoun them. Okay, well, our guess was correct. By the way, I have not looked at this chapter before whatsoever, so you're getting my actual first impressions of these things. My condolences. All right, let's get this a bit bigger. All right. So what's the harm in this? This what harm? Guessing. And then I don't think we need to look anything up here because we have our yue, child speak. So the child said, assuming this, let's just make sure that we know this is a quotation. And let's go down a little bit more. Okay. We need... Okay, so here we have Chang. Chang wen ren yan. Chang wen ren yan. Which we're going to translate... So Chang is constant, usual, frequent. So yeah, let's say constant. That sounds cool. Constant one. Oh, interesting. So here we have one to mean here and one to make known or to state. So I'm not sure exactly what we're supposed to, which one we're supposed to use here. Let's see, does it give us any help? It does not. All right, well let's, oh no, sorry, it does. It gives us our nice italics. Yes, italics, help, thank you, we appreciate it. Constant here. This is interesting though that we have one meaning here and one meaning to make known, or maybe we could think of this as to make heard. So it looks like, and I seem to remember reading about this, that this is the modern reflex of an older bit of morphology, bit of derivational morphology. So we have something like a causative, to make heard. And okay, so then what else? Ren, a man. In 1927, I think we'll go with person. I happen to know that is a bit more of an accurate translation. And what else? Then we have yen, speak. Words, language, to speak, express. So it's really interesting to see. And let's see if I can get just a little bit. No, it's cut off there. It's interesting to see the flexibility in word class. So we're given these translations: words, language, or to speak or express. And this is something that we're going to run into over and over again: ambiguity or ambiguity or underspecification of word class. So we don't know always what word class something's going to come in. But fortunately, we're in lesson 1, so we're getting lots of training wheels. Speak. So, constant here, person speak. To translate this, I think I would say something like, you always hear people say. Although I like the sort of the flavor of this translation, constant. But I think this is more, you always hear people say. And we're given a sentence break, but I think in English we would leave that as one sentence. What's the next sentence? Okay, so here we have a character which translates, which represents a word that translates as magpie or jay. I think this is che in the modern Mandarin reading. If you speak it or read it, drop the accurate pronunciation in the comments. I'm sort of floating on this ocean of uncertainty and Wade Giles. Okay, so magpie. Magpie, and then we have this word already, I think. Yes, okay, sing. Magpie sing, Ming, I think. So something like 确明ji, auspicious. So you always hear people say magpie sing auspicious. Maybe this is going to be something like when a magpie sings, it is auspicious. So a magpie singing is auspicious. Maybe that would be one way of translating it. Let's make that our guess. I think we have another thing that people always say, so I won't end the sentence in English yet. And then we have Ya Ming Xiong, which would be crow, sing, unlucky. Unlucky. Let's bring this a bit farther up. Okay, so we have this xiong from the title. A magpie singing is auspicious, and a crow's singing is unlucky. Okay, you always hear people say a magpie singing is auspicious and a crow singing is unlucky. Now we have another sentence with some new characters in it. So Jin, I believe, is what we have here. Yes, now. Jin. Now, sing. And then we have a particle of many uses. Always love to learn that there's a particle of many uses. It's always going to make our lives so much fun as we're translating. So let's just leave that for now. We will, because we have a note. Then we have ya. Thank you. Oh, thank you. This is so cool. Thank you, Ben. Okay, now sing this particle, this j particle, ya, yeah. So now sing crow, and then we have two of these grammatical things. And I happen to remember from earlier study that these are going to be fun, and so we have notes for both of them. Let's take a look. So here we have this particle j, which gives a participial force to the preceding verb, singing, or those who sing. So it almost seems like a almost like an agentive nominalization, like the one who sings. So let's translate this as one who. So now the one who sings, and then we have are the crows. So we have this final particle, yeah, which marks the end of the sentence. So let's be super agnostic and just call this particle. I don't think we have enough information just to say, or rather, I don't really want to take it on faith that it's a sentence ending particle without knowing a little bit more about it. So let's just call it a particle. And translate this as now the ones who sing are crows, or are the crows. Okay. What's next? Gu. gu. I'm gonna just look at the pinyin that Ben has very, very handily added here. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, okay. I'll wait just until Ben, if you do have a chance to put that one, which is the hoot at word, that would be super. I think it's ch, but I could be mistaken. No, take your time. Take your time. So I'll just say, for the sake of, keeping things going, gu chi zhi. So here we have a consequential particle. What is a consequential particle? This is going to be something like therefore or so. So therefore hoot at, it is not a URL, hoot at third accusative. So therefore I hoot at them. Now the ones who sing are the crows, therefore I hoot at them. So this is kind of funny. You always hear people. Okay, so we have this story where crows are cawing in the courtyard on this tree, and the kid comes over and sees them and starts saying "boo," get some new material, and then his father says, "What are you doing? What are you talking to these crows that way for?" And the kid says, "Well, you know, people are always saying that when a crow caws, that's bad luck, and when a magpie sings, that's good luck. And so it's crows singing, so I want them to stop because it'll bring bad luck." All right, let's see how we wrap this up. Okay, it is chi, gu chi zhi. Thank you. What's next? Okay, we have a sentence that we've had before, which is, I believe, is that fourth tone? Fu. Yeah, fu yue. So the, oops, okay. The father speak. His father said. Actually, we should make this all one gigantic quotation. The child said, you always hear people say. So his father said, and then how on earth did we get this? Okay, I'm in control here. I know all the keyboard shortcuts, as you can all tell. His father said, hopefully that wasn't blocking things for too long. The father said, and then we have this rather long line here, which is going to be something that I have to scroll to show you. So we have ren zhi. So we know that this is person. We know that this is this particle that we've been translating as third person accusative, but we remember that it's also going to be a kind of a subordinating particle. So let's say, let's call it genitive for lack of a better term right now. A person's or people's. What else? Ren zhi. Zhi shi, I believe we have here. So we have wisdom and being acquaintance. So zhi shi, and we have a helpful translation here that it's knowledge and experience. So people's knowledge and experience. What? People's knowledge and experience does what? Yuan, far, and here we have a verb sheng, to conquer or excel. This is one of the characters in my Chinese name, which is always fun. To conquer or excel. So it's giving us this hint. We want sheng, excel. So a person's knowledge and experience far excel, or far exceeds, I think maybe would be a better translation. What's next? Far exceeds then. Oh, interesting. Okay, so we have this. This looks like a fairly generic preposition, yu. In, at, on, for, among, by, you know, whatever you want, just put it in there. But it also here is going to be translated as than, which is interesting. And we have note G to help us with this. So let's look at that in a second. Let's just translate it as than. Then, and then we have niao, bird. Okay. So I think, you know, sort of intuitively, just from looking at this and knowing what we know about the world, we might say something like a person's knowledge and experience far exceeds that of a bird. Or people know a lot more than birds do. But let's understand what's going on with that yu, that this one here, which means then. Okay, so it says here much higher than those of birds. It doesn't really give us too much help. Far exceeds two birds. You know, this isn't something that I can very smoothly translate word for word, but we have, you know, or at least I can think of examples where we do use a preposition or a particular case to mark the thing to which something is being compared. So here we have people's knowledge and experience is far better than that of the birds. So let's give that a translation. People's knowledge and experience are far better or far exceed that of birds. Okay, we're coming along. Right, next. I actually kind of like this textbook. I don't know why. It's old, but it's kind of nice. I don't know. I like it. Sometimes the old stuff is pretty good, I have to say. What's next? Okay. So we have shang, which, okay, it means to wish, to esteem, to add, and also still. Okay. Let's just write down still. There must be a story there. I don't know what it is, but there must be a story there. Why are all those things written the same? Is it just homophony? Is it some sort of metaphorical extension? Who knows? Still, and then we have this bu. Still, so negate neng to be able to, bu neng, unable, not able to, yu. And here we have yu and zhi, yu zhi. So we have a lot of different meanings for yu. Pleased, satisfied, to be ready. But here we're going to translate it as beforehand. This is another one where it's like I'd be very curious to know what the story is there, etymologically speaking. But yu zhi, when we combine it with, excuse me, I'm going to cough off mic. When we combine it with yu zhi, we have beforehand know, so to be able to know beforehand, to be able to foresee. So they're still not able beforehand know. What are they not able to know beforehand? Ji xiong, good and bad luck. Auspicious. That's another translationese. Lucky and unlucky. So, but who are not able to know beforehand good and bad luck? I am assuming that this is going to refer to ren, people. So even though people's knowledge and experience far exceed that of birds, people are not able. So they are still unable, people are still unable. Let's just put people here. are still unable to know, to foresee or foretell good and bad luck. All right, and then we have our last sentence here, which is, we have which we had before, which we translated as and. So kwang. Kwang niao hu. So we're given help here with the kwang, still more, or how much more. And then niao, birds. Hu, which is apparently an interrogative or exclamatory particle. So we have something like how much more, or still more, birds, exclamation. How much more, birds, explanation. So I think the meaning here is pretty clear. People are still unable to foretell good and bad luck. How much more could birds? Dang. So, oh, I think we need a little bit more room here. There we go. There we go. So the whole text in our first attempt at a translation, good and bad luck. Once there were crows flocking together on a tree in a courtyard. They sang, stretching their necks. A child hooted at them. His father said, "What's the harm in this?" The child said, "You always hear people say," this sounds like a kid, right? You know, you always hear people say a magpie singing is auspicious, and a crow singing is unlucky. Now the ones who sing are the crows. Therefore I hoot at them, just like a kid would say. His father said, "People's knowledge and experience far exceed that of birds. People are still unable to foretell good and bad luck. How much more could birds?" That's a cute story. Okay, so that's our attempt with all of the notes helping us. Let's check our work and let's see what Brandt tells us. And okay, just as I go down, I really want to point out something about this textbook, which I really love. Look at all these example sentences. Whenever he makes a grammatical point, we get an example sentence that shows us, other ways or other examples. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. I think that's from the Tao Te Ching. I just love it. And so I think this is a really great textbook. And I wonder how many more of these textbooks exist out there on the internet that are out of copyright, that you can freely download on the Internet Archive or some other similar kind of source. I wonder how many more are out there that are just really good and no one knows about them. Now I'll put a link to this one in the description of this video, and I'll have to put in a little reminder to myself to do that, but so that you can also use it, or you can just look up Brandt, Introduction to Literary Chinese. Okay, but where were we? We were going to look up the translation. Okay, so this is Brandt's translation right here. And let's just go, I'm sorry for all the scrolling. Let's just compare what we have here. So he says, lucky and bad omens. I have good and bad luck. Okay, fair enough. There were crows flocking together on a tree in a courtyard. There were some crows who flocked together in a courtyard upon a tree. Okay, fair enough. More or less the same. They sang, stretching their necks, and cawed, stretching their necks. I suppose a crow, we would say caw for that. They cawed, stretching their necks. A boy hooted at them. A child hooted at them. Great. His father asked, or said, asked, whatever. Not too worried about that. What's the harm in this? What's the harm? Oh, almost 1 for 1. That's awesome. The boy said, I have often heard people say that when a magpie chatters, it brings good luck, and when a crow caws, it brings bad luck. Okay, and I gave it this sort of this sort of worldly wisdom of the child here. You always hear people say, a magpie's singing is auspicious and a crow's singing is unlucky. So I think it's slightly interesting here, the difference in the translation, because I've often heard people say that when a magpie chatters, so we have this sort of subordinate clause, when a magpie chatters in the translation, it brings good luck. But literally, the classical Chinese we have here is magpie sing, auspicious, crow sing, unlucky. So we have latitude in how we're going to translate this into English. I chose to take this as a sort of to translate this as a noun phrase. A magpie singing is auspicious, and a crow's singing is unlucky. But fine, maybe this is a better translation. And then what else do we have? Today the crows have been cawing. So now the ones who sing are the crows. Now, today, I think Jin is compatible with both. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's compatible with both. So today, now, and therefore I have hooted at them. Therefore I hoot at them. Great. The father said, man's knowledge and experience are much higher than those of birds. So people's knowledge and experience far exceed that of birds. Good. Good. Yet he cannot foresee good luck and ill luck. People are still unable to foretell good and bad luck. So Brandt has put it into one sentence. I kept it separate, but I think the meaning's pretty much preserved. Still more, the birds are not able to do it. And I have made this a sort of rhetorical question. How much more could the birds? So I think let's call that a success. I think we survived our first lesson from Brandt. I think that's the end of this chapter. Wow! Congratulations to everyone who's joined and has worked with me through this. If you're tuning in on YouTube and you enjoy this kind of thing, please do be sure to like, subscribe, all the good stuff that you do on YouTube. And you will see more of this come, especially if one particular topic tends to do well, then more of it will come. It's a great signal. Okay, so we have, and also I would like to thank Ben so much for providing the pinyin and is it Yutping for Cantonese? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. For the romanizations, that is super helpful. And if I don't think that, well, I don't see a link for the Google Sheet, but we'll see if we can put that together, because that'd be really helpful to get that. And I'd hate for Ben's work to go to waste. So what is yes, thanks Twitter, perfect. What is next? Okay, we're gonna switch gears. We are going to go on to the full screen webcam, because I have to change the location of some windows, and you don't need to see me struggling around dragging things left and right. Okay. And you're also treated to my little, transitional kind of things, which I think is part of the charm of this whole experience. Let's get this screen real estate optimized. I don't know if I can do it. I can do it. Okay. So up next, we have had fun with classical Chinese, and now we're about to have fun with the history of the French language. So this is a transitional moment to bring us into historical linguistics, specifically historical Romance linguistics, and we're going to look at how weird French is in the most positive sense. Basically, if you look at all the Romance languages, and if you were to line them up and sort of which sort of stayed closest to the Latin source and which wandered very, very far afield, you would have to put French way out in the field, so far out in the field that it's hanging out with the cows and the rabbits that are prancing around in the middle of that field. And so I've brought together 5 words that show this quality of French, and it's kind of going to be like a little bit of a puzzle. How can we get from the Latin source word to the French eventual outcome, step by step? And so let's look at what the 5 words are. Let's start there. And I'm going to put this back here, and we're going to look at kind of like a blackboard. This is cool. It's like teaching. Let's see. Thank you so much, Ben. I will put that into the transcript, or I'll put it into the video description. We'll make sure it gets out with the Brant lesson. Okay. So let's look at what are the 5 words rather that we're going to be looking at for French. So let's look at the Latin first. So we have aqua, we have Augustus, we have oculus, we have oculos, and we have fabrica. I might have to use a thicker brush here. Yeah, there we go. Aqua, Augustus, oculus, oculos, and fabrica. Yay. Ooh, cool. Okay, so meanings: water, August or August. Let's say August, the month. Eyes, and smithy. Let's use smithy here. Okay. And what are we going to get from these? We are going to get o, u, I, ye, and forge. All right. And so the question is, what happened? How did this happen? And so this is what we're going to attempt to explain. So let's take it one at a time. Let's start with fabrica, because I think it's the least intense. So let's go a bit down. I don't know how to I don't know how to manage this thing. I'm utterly useless. There we go. Okay, that took a lot longer than it should have, but it's fine. One day I will learn the ways of these apps. Okay, so we're talking about fabrica. So how do we get from fabrica, and let's put this in IPA, fabrica, to forge? Well, we're going to have to take, we do have 2,000 years to do it in roughly, so that'll be plenty of time. So one thing that's crucial to know about sort of Romance etymology is that the nouns tend to be taken into the Romance languages not from the Latin nominative case, which is the case that you'll see them in the dictionary, but from the accusative case without M. So the accusative case of fabrica in Latin would be fabricant, with a sort of nasalization on that final vowel. The final M is going to be spelling that. So let's write this. This would be orthographically fabricam, phonologically fabricant, something like that anyway. But that's not the form ancestral to the form of the Romance languages. Not exactly. We have so we talked about diglossia in the literary Chinese video, which is a situation in which you have a wide divergence between the language used in some contexts and in one context versus another in a society. So you might have a spoken form of the language that's very different than the written form. The written form might be based on an older variety or a different regional variety. And so in the case of Latin, we have this sort of so-called classical form, which you will learn if you go study Latin. But then you also have the late spoken Latin form, which you'll often hear referred to as vulgar Latin, and people get into all sorts of academic fights over whether that's an appropriate name. But that form is going to be something more like, and we're going to put this in IPA as well, fabrica. So we have the syllable breaks here as well, and stress here. So fabrica. What are the differences here? We have, instead of the voice bilabial stop, b, we have a voice bilabial fricative v. And instead of a short e, we have a short a vowel here. And the classical Latin vowel system and the Proto-Romance vowel system are quite different. In classical Latin, we have 5 vowels which contrast in length. So a, e, I, o, u, and the long versions. And in the Proto-Romance vowel system, you have no length contrast, but you have 7 vowels. So what happens is things get shuffled around a bit. We don't have to worry too much about the details of that right this moment. But suffice to say that the short E is going to turn into an A. So we have fabrica. And this is going to be our starting form. Okay, so Ben asks if there's a theory as to why they're typically derived from the accusative. That's a good question. And I am not up to date on the literature that would help me answer it. But what is a sort of general pattern is a kind of collapsing in case distinctions as we go from these classical Indo-European languages into the modern ones. Generally, you do see a lot of languages collapse in case distinctions. For the most part, there are exceptions. And so we can think of it as a broader kind of shift in that direction, although why the accusative as opposed to the nominative, that's a good question. It might have something to do with phonology, but I'm not sure. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I'll have to do some research on that. Okay, so let's start getting from point A to point B here. So we have fabrica. What's the first thing that we're going to do to get us to forge? Well, we're going to take this ab and turn it into an ow before a consonant. So we are going to have, instead of fabrica, we're going to have faurica. Faurica. And maybe you can start to see the shape of this pathway. We then have a lenition. We have lenition of this intervocalic k, this voiceless velar stop here. So we go from faurica to Faurega. Faurega. All right. And then what happens is these intertonic vowels, these vowels in the middle of the words that are not stressed, they are going to fall out. So we go from faurega to faurga. And faurga, we then have this typical French sound change where we have ga becoming ja. So we have palatalization of this g before a, which is kind of interesting, and it might indicate that that a was relatively farther forward in the mouth. We also, this is the same kind of thing that gives us sha, like cat, as opposed to the variety ancestral to English cat. Okay, so we have faurga, so we have that changing to faurja. And now I'm running out of room, and you're running out of being able to see, so I get to struggle to try and figure out how to get us. This is literally my best my best attempt at scrolling in this program. I apologize. Okay, so we have faurja. We want to be sort of closer over to this side, please. Faurja, and we are going to take that ow diphthong and we're going to monophthongize it. So we go from faurja to forja. And now you can see, you know, we're in the home stretch. Forja. Next, we get the final a turning into a schwa. Forge. Then we get deaffrication of this j. So we go from forge to forge. Then we take our nice coronal trill and we turn it into a uvular, something like forge. And optionally, we are going to not pronounce that schwa until we get forge. And so, fabrica to forge. Yeah, if there is a pan tool in this program, that would be super helpful. And in my investigations, I have not yet discovered how to use how exactly that would work. If anyone here knows sketchbook, which is what this is, please tell me and put us all out of our misery. So I'm going to do a quick scene change so you don't have to get dizzy while I monkey around with this. Okay. So, okay, it's getting exciting. Back. Okay, so we've done the easy one. Let's look at our pair of the word for I and the word for eyes, so the singular and plural. So our classical input is going to, or our spoken Latin input is going to be something like, so for the sake of, you know, using familiar terms, let's say classical and vulgar Latin, you know, academically, asterisk, you know, debate, blah, blah, blah. But we have oculum and we have ocolo. So the differences between these vowels, the initial vowel is due to this this Proto-Romance vowel reorganization, which is going to take the short o of classical Latin and open it up a bit to o. So ocolo. All right. So we have our work cut out for us because we need that to become I, and we need oculos to become ye. And so our input for that is going to be okolos. All right, let's continue. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have a very early vowel loss in this sort of weak position here. So we go and we have oklo and oklos. We then have this kl cluster that's formed by that vowel loss is going to act very strangely in basically every Romance language, and something slightly different is going to happen. In French, we're going to go from oklo to oilo and oilos. Then we are going to have a diphthongization. So this nice new open O that we created in the reorganization of the vowel space, we are going to turn into a wo. So we now have woilo and woilos. And these are still stressed all in the same place. That's good. Then this yl combination is going to palatalize. So we're going to go to wolio. Oops, I did that wrong. That is the wrong way around. Yep. At least I know how to erase things. That's wolio and wolios. And then, okay, that's sort of, that's not exactly I and y. So how do we get there? We are going to delete some vowels. Let's delete some vowels. Wolio. So instead of instead of wolio, we're going to have wol. So we're deleting our final vowel, and we're going to delete this vowel as well. So we're going to have wols. So wol and wols. Then something special is going to happen over here. So we are going to go off to the side a little bit, go up, and we are going to insert a T between this palatal lateral. I'm always doing it like a lambda. Waltz, waltz. And nothing's going to happen to wol. Then this wo diphthong is going to turn into, I'm just going to bring this back down so we can see the parallelism. This palatal lateral is going to D, is going to D, actually, let's do it up here, is going to, no, I was right the first time, let's do it down here. We're going to change this to welts. Welts. Sorry. I'm failing here. Never do anything at the blackboard. Never think of the blackboard. We need to depalatalize this before a consonant. This palatal lateral, and so we need to do wolts. Okay, now we have wol and wolts. Now, okay, we're back on track. Then we're going to take this diphthong, and we are going to change it to welts. So wo is going to turn into we. Well, welts. And now the two forms are starting to diverge quite a bit. This L is going to velarize in welts to become welts. And apologies for the lack of pen tool. So we can have welts, and well is going to remain the same. Then we're going to have some dissimilation. So from welts, we're going to get youts because we don't like these two W's in such close proximity to each other. So we get youts. And then our ew is going to turn into ö. So we're going to get yuts and öl. Now we're getting closer. We get our deaffrication. So let's just use the space we have here and say yus. Finally, we're going to lose our final consonants and just have y. So that gets us to the modern form. But here we have a little bit more work to do. We're going to lower this vowel a little bit because it's before a consonant. And then we are going to take this palatal lateral and delateralize it to become a. And this gives us our output form. Oops. Which is spelled with an L. Whew. So yeah, that happened. Okay. Now, scene change, transition. We are going to look at transitional music. We are going to look at I have the ability to think of more than one thing at the same time, as you can all tell. We can look at the word for August. So here, our class. Oh, that's not the right tool. I don't. Okay. So here we have our classical form, which is going to be something like Augustum. And we are going to not inherit directly from this, but rather from something more like agosto. Because we have this dissimilation of ow before this oo in the next syllable, and then that oo actually gets reorganized and turned into an o. So the two short oos in this word Augustum become o's, but not before they take away the rounding on the end of that diphthong. So we get agosto, which is basically what it is in half the Romance languages today. So we have our work cut out for us with this one. First thing that's going to happen is we're going to have lenition. So agosto is going to become agosto. And before too long, aosto. So that voiced stop in between vowels is just going to get eliminated. So we have aosto. Then we have a chain shift, a small chain shift that happens in French, where ou becomes i and o becomes ou, spelled ou. And so our oh no, sorry, we need to do one thing before that. We need to get rid of this final vowel. Almost forgot. So aost. So that o on the end is going to come out. And then we are going to do that chain shift. So we go from aost to aust. Then we're going to drop out the S in coda position before a consonant, and that's going to lengthen the preceding vowel. So we go probably through an H stage. So aust, aut, aut. All right, so now we're getting closer. We then have these vowels in hiatus, which are usually not really something any language loves. Well, some languages love them more than others, but there's a tendency to dislike them anyway. And we're going to lose it. So we're going to lose this a and just keep the stressed vowel oot. Then we're losing the final consonant, although not in all varieties of French. This word will still have a t in some, but we go from oot to oo. And then finally, in some varieties of French, we will lose the length as well, Metropolitan French included, and we'll just come out with oo, which gives us our form, which actually orthographically harkens back to around here. Oops, you're a bit off screen with your orthography. There we go. So agosto to oo. I will also point out that this vowel in hiatus is kept in some varieties of French. So in some we have au, and in some we have oot. But this is the most extreme one. So I thought, why not do that one? Okay. Quick scene change break again. Oh, interesting. Haitian Creole. It's je. Oh, interesting. So we go from les yeux to je to je, something like that. Interesting. Oh yeah. Well, you can go very, very far. You can go very, very far indeed when French is in the mix. Okay. Let's go and do our last one. This one is pretty good. Okay. Trying to find some space in our blackboard. Let's go back. Let's take a look. We are going to do something very, very, very extreme. We are going to go from aqua to eau. So our orthographic form aqua, going to be something like aqua in the classical language, probably something more like aqua in the spoken language. That's going to be our ancestor to French. So what's going to happen next? Well, this is one where actually in my research I found two potential answers that both get us to the same place eventually. So on the one hand, it's possible. So let's diverge the timeline here and make sure that we have enough space. You'll see both. So let's curve this around. We'll do it here. So we have one timeline in which you have this KW cluster being treated like one of the KL clusters we had, which have this palatal element come in. So from Kwa, we would have something like Iwa. And then from Iwa, we would get the simplification of that diphthong to Ewa. And then we'd go on from there. The key thing is to get us from Aqua to Ewa. So once we can get to Ewa, then we're good and we can get all the way home. But there's another potential route that I found in my research for this, which is that it's possible that instead of turning into a palatal glide like Iwa, we had agua, which, so we had voicing, this sort of regular lenition that we see of the voiceless velar stop is going to voice to agua, and then we are going to have this a, which is now in an open syllable, so no consonant after it in the same syllable. This period represents the syllable boundary here. It's going to diphthongize to aegua, and then that diphthong is going to simplify into egua, and then this g is going to eventually drop out ewa, become a fricative, and then eventually ewa. So whichever way you go, you get to ewa, which is what we need. So then what happens is we lose that. So let's just take this one on the left because we have more space on the left to talk or to write. We take that a and it turns into a schwa, ewa. And then what happens, so what happens in different varieties is radically different at this point. But let's take the variety that's sort of ancestral to standard French. And we have this e with diphthong. And what happens is you get an a finding its way in here. And so you have this kind of ewa. So it's a diphthong where the it's a falling diphthong. So we have, I don't know if I can make this little, so we have ewa. And then that's a bit weird. So eventually, before too long, we went from ewa to ewa. So the a became the primary element here. And what happens to diphthongs at the end of, what happens to at the end of a word in French? Well, usually if it's come from a and it's made it this far, it doesn't drop out until relatively late, and it stays in the orthography, and it's still pronounced in certain contexts. but for some reason we lose it in this o word, in this water word. So that's kind of interesting, and that drops out roughly around this time. So we have ow, and then this ow is going to monophthongize to o, and then we're going to lose this on glide, so we get o, and orthographically eau, which is going to reflect something more like this stage. So yeah, that's been quite the journey, and there may have been some, things may not always have occurred in exactly this order, but more or less this is what gets us from there to here with French. So definitely a very, very radical departure from the source, from the parent language, and something that sets French off from the other Romance languages as well. When you see agosto, agosto, and then you see u, it's like something's different here. Okay, so that is the end of our exploration into French etymology and sound change. Let's change our pace. Let's go over to something else. Let's look at the Conlang project that we've been working on over the past 2 weeks, because we need to develop it more. Last time, so if you've been following along so far, last time we concocted a fable, also involving a raven, interestingly enough. We concocted a fable in the language. We had to develop quite a lot of vocabulary and quite a lot of grammar to get there. And what happened was we succeeded. And so we have a nice fable, which I think let's read the fable right now, because it's fun, and because for those of you who are just joining us, I'd like you to see the general vibe of this language, and then we can start to develop it a little bit more. Okay, so let's get the correct orientation, and let's move me over here for now so that you can see everything. And maybe I think 200% is the way to go. Okay, so we have Chaska papayawi. Chaska skuptaifu fazana si yakam payawi kusizik wanfi. Lunanavia masfa ivu mamasliku afituch. Uzaska snakut sikuli kumimna. Lukunavidi aliba pa naklabi si papalwi malak sunavi si sahna si payawi ivu sumani wintu uk. Lu nanafia payawi ivu masliku lavi wintu. Ugabin lu kilaya pastansi mahurum si lu antuk timimas. Pafamantu ma patunlaka masumani nal tununaspa. Lu kunavidi palan laksisiva yavalu pahinu lumulakwawansim. Lu nanafia scham skazik. Palu fakuli susuva uyu mamakal. So, yeah, this language is a lot of fun. It has some of the fun aspects of it that I find: 3 vowels, e, 3 phonemic vowels, e, u, a. We have 2 uvular consonants, which are represented orthographically by q and x. So we have the voiceless uvular stop, q, and we have the voiceless uvular fricative, ch. And what happens to stops and fricatives that are intervocalic in this language is that they voice allophonically, much like fricatives did in Old English. If you're familiar with that, we don't have any voicing distinction on obstruents, so that is stops and fricatives in this language. But what we do have is we have allophonic voicing. So whenever a stop or a fricative is in an environment conducive to voicing, so between two vowels in this case, we will voice it. And I'm not very good at doing this, so in my little recitation there, I noticed there were several instances in which I messed that up. But practice makes perfect. So we'll get some more practice today for sure. But today, we are going to do two things. One, we need a name for this language. We have no name. This is like the language with no name. It's still, the Google Sheet's even called Stream 2021-1207. This cannot stand. And so we need to come up with a name for this language. And so maybe we can start to think about where do language names come from? Language names, and let's get out our lexicon here so we can make quick reference to things. Language names often come from words that just mean speech or real speech, real language. People are often fairly ethnocentric, throughout history, and they'll talk about their own group as the real people or just people, and their speech as real speech. And so that's one avenue that we could go down. We could come up with a word for people and just give the language the name of the people. This is where we get Deutsch, the word for German, from an old word meaning of the people. So we could do something like that. Alternatively, if we are thinking in terms of world building for this, we can start to wonder, where do these people live? Do they live in a vast plain? Do they live in a forest? Maybe we can give a name to this place and then call the language after that. So if anyone has any interesting ideas on this front, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, I will start to generate some potential candidates. So let's bring up a second window here so that we can see more than one thing at once. We've got our grammatical stuff here, our lexicon here, and you can see everything. I feel good. Okay, so you can see everything. Let's start coming up with some ideas. I don't think we have any particular word for people or speech yet, do we? I don't think so. So we're wide open. I'm going to start to come up with some ideas. So let's generate some word forms. Something like tuval, that's valid. Swacha, swacham. What else could we do? We could do something like lamak. We could do something like koldi. We could do something like walan. Do we have anything else? Walanka. But that's valid, right? We can do that. Yeah, we have a complicated enough syllable structure to allow for these kinds of things. Walanka, Hoti, Lamak, Swacham, Tuval. Okay, so they live on a coastline with a temperate climate. Okay, let's roll with that. So maybe they live in a place. Do we have something like coast? I don't think so. Apologies for the scrolling. So maybe we need a word for coast. And for some reason, I like this fragrant idea. What if they lived somewhere called the Fragrant Coast, or the Fragrant Wood, or something like that? Tamiya. Tamiya Coast. Okay, we need to put that in the opposite color. Bolding, rather. Coast, Tamiya. Okay, so if we had Tamiya, so maybe they live in a region called the fragrant coast. Let's try that. Let's give ourselves some. How did we do? I have to remind myself. The fragrant. Yes. Okay. So we have this C construction. So Yustaku C Tamiya. Obviously, it's going to be way too long for a name, but just to give us something to start with. And we have Fragrant Coast. Yustaku si Tamiya. I like the way that sounds quite a lot. What if we took this and did a sort of have this impulse to kind of take this and abbreviate it. So in some languages, it's possible to take the first syllable of a morpheme or one syllable of a particular morpheme and use it as an abbreviation for the whole thing. So what if we had, instead of Yustaku si Tamiya, we had something like Yustam, which were a short form for Yus Taku. So here's the form we take, Yus Taku si Tamiya. And Yustam is actually a valid shape here. So Yustam could be the name for the region. Maybe a long time ago it meant the fragrant coast, and now it's become worn down, and you can still see remnants of it in the word Yustaku and Tamiya. Maybe that's what happened. Yustam. And because it is an adjective, we would need some morphology on the end. Yustamiya. Yustamiya. I like that. I think we can use that. Yustamiya. Okay. So Yustamiya, and we could call the language, so the place could be Yustamiya. The language in the language itself might be Yustamiya something. Yustamiya speech, maybe something like Yustamiya. I'd like a short word for speech. Yustamiya. I don't know. Something like Yustamiya. We want to just show off the unique parts of this language in the name, if possible. So I want a Q in here. Yustamiya Kal, or something like that. So this would be Fragrant Coast language. Yustamiya Kal. But, maybe as an exonym, people might just call it Yustamiya. An exonym being what people who aren't speakers, who aren't part of this community, call it. I dig this. Yustamiya Kal. So the fragrant coast language. Okay. Why don't we let's let this percolate. Let's sit with this for a while. See how it feels. But I might go ahead and change the name of the sheet. And let's put in our new words here. Yustamiya, Fragrant Coast, place name, and Kal is going to be our word for speech language. Okay, and then we have some other word forms, which let's venture down to the bottom. Let's just put them in. We don't know what we're going to do with them yet. They'll come in handy, I'm sure, soon. Okay, so we have Yustamiya Kal. And we have, oh, I should put that into the lexicon as well. Eustamia. We might want to write it with a Y in the orthography for those who are not hip to the IPA scene. We can make that decision later. Eustamia Kal. Cool. Okay, that's number one on the agenda done today. We have only two things. So number one is the name. That's done. Excellent. We can get rid of it. I thought we'd work backwards and make a proto-language for this language. So this is kind of not the way that it's often done. When people are interested in making historically related languages, what they'll do is they'll usually make the proto-language first and then derive the descendant languages. But you can also go the other way, and you can sort of just keep bouncing back and forth between them. And I find the more you do that, the more naturalistic your language ends up feeling. So let's do it. So we have this language. Let's look at our phonology, because this is mostly going to be phonological in nature, these investigations. And what we want to do here is say etymology. So we need to figure out what this language used to be like. One thing that occurs to me is that perhaps this language used to be not a language with a 3-vowel system and this kind of syllable structure, but what if it used to be a language with a much more, or at least a moderately more elaborate vowel system? So what if it were had been a 5-vowel system? So this is the proto-language. And rigid CV structure. What would that end up looking like? So we would have any kind of consonant cluster. Any consonant cluster would have to be broken up, and we would have more vowels in the original than we have now. And so we would have to have some way of deriving the 3 that we have now from the 5 we used to have. So let's take an example of a word that is kind of a good. So we can start with qal, which is our word for speech. So originally this may have been something like kala. And then the question is, if it had been kala, how come we still have forms like fazana, which, how do we distinguish between these two cases if we're going to be deleting the final vowels for some and not others? And this is where our larger vowel system can come in handy. So maybe only there were 2 things or what we had in the proto-language was an a, but there were 2 of them, so that they could be treated differently. So we could call them a1 and a2, and only a1 got deleted. Or maybe this would be something, I think probably more realistic, if I could find where my IPA keyboard is. What if it were a schwa? So we're perfectly happy with having schwas drop out. We just saw a lot of that in French. So what if we have kala and fazana as our proto-forms? And so wherever we have a consonant cluster like aptuma, we might have something like apatuma. So that's an option, apatuma. And then these schwas just drop out. That's one thing we could do. Another thing we could do is we could, this wouldn't give us a 5 vowel, that would give us a 4 vowel system, a, I, u, schwa. What if we had a setup like this? Just going to move some windows so I can see everything properly. What if we had a system like this? So we have a, I, o, u in the proto-language. So we can just move that here. And let's just say a, I, u. We'll maintain for now. We may not want to do that, but... And then we have schwa, which drops out. So yeah, we would have a 6 vowel system then. So schwa will drop out and just give us nothing. Maybe a will give us e, and o will give us u. That's kind of fine. I don't... So this is the proto, and this is modern. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about this. Let's put the modern forms on the right so that we can not mess with our left to right order brain, our left to right order reading brains, provided that that's indeed what we have. I certainly do. So we have our proto form. This is just a bit too, I don't know, it's not fun enough for me. What I would like to do is have something, I want to put in a chain shift, essentially. I want this proto-language to be much more different. So what if instead of, so we have O going to U, like we had in French. We had, oops, no, sorry, I don't want to remove these. I want to remove these. So we have O going to U in French, or as in French. We have U going to E, which this is kind of like a change that you see in Greek. Actually, if we use Greek as a model, we could have A go to E as well, E go to E, U go to E. So we have this convergence of all these vowels on E. And then how do we get this schwa issue dealt with? Maybe we don't need a schwa. Maybe what we need is we need to use stress or something to get these vowels. Or maybe we need to use vowel length. I don't know. This is a good question. Why don't we stick with the schwa for now? I'm going back and forth on this. This is kind of the process. So we have a sort of a very different vowel system in the proto-language than we do in the modern language. So let's see how we can reconcile these things. So the only thing I think we need to change is apatuma. It should be apatoma, which would give us aptuma. Then we can see some other ones like justamiya. So let's do yustaku first. Yustaku, and I'm just putting things everywhere. I'm very disorganized. Sorry. Yustaku would be something like to give us modern yustaku. Let's give us some space here. Here. There we go. Okay, so yustaku, we would have to get, our ya wouldn't change, our u would be o, our s would be s, our nothing would be schwa, our t would be t, and so yosatako would be the ancestral form. Yosatako. That's cool. Let's see if we have another one. Let's find one like naklapi, to dive. So how does this start? Probably would have to be something like oops. Thought I had that in the clipboard still. Nope. Nakalap. And then we have a choice. We could have E, A, or U in the proto-language. And so what if we had something like nakalapu? That would work. Okay, so we've got some differences here. Yosatako, nakalapu. Qala, Fazana. I don't know if this allophonic voicing would have gone would have would have been there in the proto language. Let's say no for now. Fasana, apatoma, yosatako. Question from Ben: Am I aware of any languages that diphthongized e and o to I and ow, respectively? Off the top of my head, no. I can think of a few that did the other way around. Not off the top of my head, no. What we could do, and I'd do this off screen because it would require a lot of scrambling, but I could look up in the Index Diachronica, which is a really great resource for diachronic conlangers. You can go up and look. You can go and look up all sorts of different sound changes that have been proposed in the literature, but yeah, that I don't think would be very fun for you to watch me search that up. So I'll do that, and I'll put in a comment whether I can find any instances of that, because I'm curious now too. Whenever someone comes up with a good question like this, I want to know the answer as well. Okay, so let's make the consonants a little weird too, or not weird. They're not weird. They're just different. So let's make some consonant changes as well. So we have what are we working with here for consonants? We're looking at this system. I almost want the uvulars to be kind of special for our language. So let's not have uvulars in the proto-language. And let's do something which I did see. I did a little bit of prep for this this historical segment here. And I looked up and I did find one instance where we get uvulars from labialized velars, which that sounds kind of fun. Let's see what we can. Let's see if we can employ that trick. Okay, so we have, going down here, we have Q and we have Q and H coming from Qua and Hua. So then let's see how this changes our what's it called? Our reconstructions. So instead of Kala, we have Kuala. Instead of Fasana stays the same, Apatoma stays the same. Nakalapu would become Nakwalapu. Okay, that's kind of cool. Let's see if we can find another language another one that would have some changes here. Sachna, plant. So here we would have Sahwana. Sahwana. Okay, that's kind of cool. And anything else that's got a lot of changes in it, so we can show this off. Scham. Here we would have S, schwa, labularized velar, fricative, sahwama. Oh, that's cool. Sahwama, turning into scham. Okay, but this is still pretty straightforward. Is there anything else we can do to make this a little bit more interesting? So we have, so anything else we can do to make this a little bit more interesting? Kwalapu. Maybe we could have it so that we could have, let's work on some morphology that worked in the proto-language that becomes irregular for us. So let's say that we have a fairly isolating or a fairly analytic language in the modern language, but let's say that was not necessarily the case in the proto-language. And let's let's do some derivation. So let's look at sunav. Let's look at snakut. So snakut means foolish. So how does this come into the, how does this get reconstructed to quota? Quota. And maybe we have this which is a prefix that means, do we have anything else that we could use for this? Snakot, Slufi, Skasik, Sizik. Ah, okay, so what if we had this as a prefix that meant bad or evil? Just or bad in some way. And we had a, yeah, okay, let's use this. So we have this prefix which means bad, and then we have naquota, which means wise. I don't know. Sometimes I run out of places to write things all too often. Let's go down here. Okay, so we have this bad prefix and then the wise. And we have sinaquota, which means so wise but in a bad way, so foolish. So we have this, our word snakut. We have also presumably nakut, which means wise, although that may not remain in the language in the present form. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We don't have to make up our mind on that right now. And then let's say that when so let's say that when is unstressed, it deletes. When is unstressed, it deletes. But when it's stressed, it turns into e, like everything else. So delete or e stressed. So we're still going to work through the consequences of this, because we then have to worry, hey, wait, we're talking about stress. We never talked about stress before. What's going on there? But we will get there. Maybe not today, but we will get there. So we have this word sizik, which means evil. I'd like to derive that from this prefix too. So we have s plus maybe something like sasuka. And suka could be good. So this is kind of like ungood. So this is evil, right? Rather, suka on its own is good. And this turns into seek. And because this is stressed, we're just gonna declare that for some reason this is stressed in the prefix here, but not here. We'll figure out why soon. So that's why becomes e in this language, in this word. Sorry, sasuka, sisik, sinaquota, snakut, or sonaquota maybe. So let's just, before we end, because I see we are really getting close to time, let's think a little bit about how stress worked in the proto-language. So I want to say that we have anti-penultimate stress in this language, in the proto-language. So we have how we do this is you ignore the last syllable, and then you make a foot out of the previous two syllables. So and then assign stress to the left edge of that. So sanakwota, and that's how we will avoid having to turn these into E. I wonder if we can get rid of another vowel this way. I wonder if we can we can unify E with, say, A. Or sorry, unify schwa with A. And so we can get this variable outcome. That's something that I might ponder and do next time. But I want to catch up with, isig means will or intent. Yeah, okay, that's good. So instead of, so suka, this protoform suka means will. So sasuka, or susuka rather, is bad will. Do we have sahwama? So we're going to have a problem because sahwama would want to have stress here. Well, what if we had a length distinction? Then we wouldn't have to worry about it. So what if we had sahwama, or maybe we have vowels in hiatus, so sahwaama, and so then we would get the stress on sahwaama, and then we would, yes, okay, that would work. So the nice thing about this is you don't have to be scientific or anything. You just get, you work on, you just twist it to fit what you want, but then you are responsible to make everything cohere relatively nicely together. So let's see if we have done that. So we have sahwama, sahwana, that's going to get the stress in the right place. Sanakwata, that's going to be fine. Nakwalapu, yosatako, apatoma, and fasana kwala. Okay, so that's good. So we're going to have this 10 vowel system in the 5 vowel with 2 quantity distinctions, short and long, in the proto language. So then we have we'll have that and anti-penultimate stress in the proto language, and then that should get us somewhere interesting. But I see that we are now at 4 p.m. and I don't understand how this happened so quickly. Let's say a few parting words. I think this was a very, very interesting session with our language, which we now have a name for, Yustamiakal. What would that have been in the proto language? I'll leave that as an exercise for you. See if you can reconstruct it and leave it in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on the stream, I don't expect you to do that so quickly. But yeah, this has been quite a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see how this language is starting to develop. The one thing that I find that there's always a danger of doing when you start reconstructing protoforms is you start wanting to make sibling languages. And already I can see that I want to have another language beside this one. And I'm resisting. I want to flesh this language out a little bit, but maybe we'll dip in and make some other languages for this this family that Yustamiakal is in. So this has been a really fun stream for me. I hope it's also been a fun stream for you. If you have any thoughts about the language, feel free to put it in the description on YouTube when you watch this on YouTube. The full video will come up first, and then we will divide it into sort of more narrowly focused chunks over the coming week. But other than that, I will see you all back here next time. It will be on our normal day, which is Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We will see you then. And thanks again. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Ben, for all your help. And we'll make sure to put the the transcriptions in Mandarin and Cantonese in the description. So thank you again, and we will see you